Welcome to the show. My guest today is Trevor Sikkema. He's the co-host of the Locked On NFL Draft podcast and also the senior NFL draft analyst at the Draft Network. It's a website that provides a lot of NFL draft content, including mock drafts and much more. I love the NFL draft. I don't know if you guys do, but I found Trevor's podcast, and this guy really knows his stuff. So if you're a fan of the NFL draft, you're going to love this episode. And if you're not, then hopefully you might become a fan after hearing this episode. We discussed Trevor's career climb from covering the volleyball team at the University of Florida to now working on his draft site. We also discuss why we both love the draft so much. We do the analysis of draft prospects and how much the mental aspect plays a role. And then, we geek out a little bit about some of the upcoming prospects in this draft. It was a lot of fun, and I hope you guys enjoy it too.
Yeah.
Okay, we got you. Cool. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
Good. So, welcome to my little show here.
Thanks, appreciate it. I'm sorry I had to push you back a couple hours.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, I just as long as we have time to go through everything, I got a lot of questions for you. So.
Okay.
All right. So my first question, most important question, are you able to get your hair cut during this pandemic? Because you got some real stylish hair. So how do you hold that up in the pandemic here?
All I'll say is that it's a good thing that social distancing is a real thing, because I have not gotten my hair cut in like 2 months because of all this. So no.
Really?
Won't let anybody touch my hair. So it's just been growing out. Maybe this is my getting past the awkward stage in the long hair, because I haven't been able to get a haircut ever since the lockdowns got really serious.
Wow. Okay. Well, how are you holding up during the whole pandemic? I mean, I assume you do a lot of your work from home anyways, right?
Yeah, a lot of what we do is remote. So I'm very fortunate that honestly not a lot has changed for me. I'm normally kind of popping around either to different coffee spots or little delis or things like that to kind of do my work to get a change of scenery. So I haven't been able to do that, but in terms of the work, we're chugging along, and with the draft coming up in less than 2 weeks now, it's been full steam ahead for us. So not a whole lot has changed, and I'm very lucky that that's the case.
Now, because you do the NFL draft stuff, do you ever go to the pro days? Because a lot of the colleges will hold a pro day where they'll showcase the athletes at their school. Do you go to any of those ever? Or?
Yeah, so I've done that in the past. I wasn't going to do any of them this year, so it didn't really affect my scheduling. But
okay.
Back when I was living in Tampa, I would do, USF, UF, Florida State, Miami, FIU, UCF. I'd run around the state and go to all those pro days. Nice.
So there's a rumor going around that baseball's maybe thinking of playing here. So in Arizona, I live in Arizona, so they were thinking about doing their season here in Arizona with the 10 spring training facilities. What did you think about that? Is that did you think there's any credence to that?
It would just be hard to do. I know what they're doing, because they obviously want to take this as seriously as they can, but it really doesn't matter where you are in the country. I think that we just need to be taking this as straight as we can here with the precautions and with people staying away and just making sure that we're doing what we need to do. I know people want sports back. Trust me. I mean, I do as much as anybody. Baseball is probably the sport that I watch the least, and I would kill to watch a live baseball game right now. And so, I know that people really want it back, but the NBA's talked about that too. Going in cities where the virus isn't so prevalent and things like that, and I just have a hard time thinking that the players are going to sign off on something like that, and I'm not sure they're going to be able to pull it off. I want sports back as much as anybody else, but I'm not sure. I don't think that that's probably a realistic plan.
So, I mean, you're a bit of an insider. You're in the media. You're around the media people. You talk to coaches and players. You think, are they preparing like there will be a season, or are you thinking maybe there's not going to be a season, or could it be delayed for football?
In terms of NFL, with like college and NFL?
Yeah, college and NFL.
I think as of right now, they are full steam ahead thinking that this is going to happen.
Okay.
But I know that there are people that I have talked to that don't believe that it's going to happen. However, I have not heard any plans from either the NCAA or any of the conferences or the NFL themselves that it's being considered like they're talking about changing plans. I think that as of right now, they're still assessing what the situation is. If they have to go beyond what is, I think, the April 30th kind of lockdown target that they have, if they have to go much further than that, then they'll probably have to start discussing stuff. But as of right now, no. As of right now, I think that both leagues are fully planning to play.
Okay, well, I hope that does. Yeah, because I think I heard that the NCAA had 3 plans. They had a regular on-time schedule, and then they had the contingency where they start late, and then the third plan was that they wouldn't have a season, which I hope it doesn't get that bad.
Right.
I mean, delayed would be bad enough, but at least we'd still have a season. But I feel like things are going to hopefully turn around in a few months is a long time, so...
Yeah, I would certainly hope so. And it seems like people are taking this pretty seriously, and that's a good thing. So that's the big thing, is that the more serious we take it, the more under control we get it, the less people get sick, and that's the most important part. You know, it's such a secondary and even ancillary thing that, hey, we get sports back. I mean, that'd be a great thing, but the most important part is obviously doing what's right for everybody around us that we might not even know. And I think that that's the most important part. I'm glad that we've seen society across the country take it as serious as it has been. And like I said, I think there are plans that exist, but nobody's moving towards those contingency plans yet. And
right.
So I think that's where we stand.
Yeah, no, and I think here the numbers are actually better there's actually less deaths than they expected. So that's a good thing. So I hope it continues that way and we'd flatten the curve and all that. So anyways, let's talk about you. So let's go back with your history. You went to a small school. You started at a small school called Southeastern University in Florida. Now, did you play sports there, or did you play sports in high school, or how'd you get involved in sports?
No, so I played sports all through high school. It's funny because I'm from Florida, just south of Tampa, and I actually grew up playing hockey. Not many kids grow up playing hockey in Florida, but that was my first love, and so I played hockey a lot when I was growing up, and then kind of when I got into middle school and high school, I went into different sports, ended up playing high school varsity soccer. That was kind of my main sport as I was going through high school. But to answer your question, no, I didn't play sports for Southeastern.
Okay.
I played obviously every single intramural sport that I could get my hands on, but didn't play for the college. And it's funny because I went to Southeastern because, one, it wasn't too far away from home. I didn't want to go too far. And, two, they had a good business program. And what I really wanted to do was I wanted to take over family business. My dad's got a landscaping business. And so I thought about that, thought about kind of being the next one in line to be the big boss. And I ended up taking some business classes, and I hated it. I was so bored. And I was like, man, this isn't for me. And it's for a lot of people. But I wasn't interested in it at all. And then I was kind of bounced around, thought about some different majors, and it wasn't until I took it wasn't even a sports radio class. It was just a radio class at Southeastern with one of my best friends, and we ended up turning it into a sports radio show because our teacher said, yeah, you can turn it into whatever you want, whatever you're interested in. And I loved it so much that I said, you know what? Maybe I can make a career out of this thing. I love writing already. I love talking about sports. I love being on social media. And so that's when I had the idea to go after it, make it my major, try to make it a career. And from there, and that idea is when I transferred from Southeastern to the University of Florida to go be a part of their broadcast program.
Right. And so this is interesting. You went to University of Florida, big school. Now, eventually you got to write about the basketball team, but I thought this was interesting. You actually started out as a beat writer for the volleyball team, which I love this because people could look at your follower. You have 38,000 followers on Twitter, and then I don't think they understand the climb that you had to take to get there. Like, you started out, I mean, you can say that you love the volleyball team, but I guarantee that wasn't your top choice, was to write for the I didn't even know they did articles about the volleyball team. So talk about that.
Yeah, it was, I got there. Kind of the start of what would have been considered my junior year. So I knew I was only going to be there for 2 years, but I had already declared a major. So there's an ESPN branch that's on campus, and it's a radio station there. It was ESPN 850 AM when I was there. God, I don't even know if it's still that now. Here we are about 6 years later, but that's what I worked for when I was a student. And so I worked on that station, and every single sport had to be covered. And football and basketball, they went to the older kids, right? The seniors got seniority for those. And so when it came around my turn, not only was I not a senior, but I was a new transfer. So I didn't even put in work when I was a freshman or a sophomore.
Right.
So it was kind of like I was definitely picking at the bottom of the barrel. I ended up picking volleyball because my high school, they had a pretty great volleyball team. We would go to the Final Four in the state tournament all the time. And so I was familiar with the game of volleyball.
Oh,
it was
good.
entertaining. I liked it. I thought I knew the baseline enough to cover it. And so I said, yeah, sure, I'll cover volleyball. I really didn't know anything about Florida's volleyball program.
Mm-hmm.
And then I find out that, Mary Wise is the coach, and they're an absolute powerhouse, and they're incredible. And I got to say, man, it was so much fun to do. I was so scared when I was covering my first couple of volleyball games. I didn't know how to cover it. I didn't know what to write. And so you eventually just kind of, the biggest lesson there for me was you learn by doing. I went into something, I said, hey, I know I want to do sports, but of course everybody wants to cover football. You don't get to do that right away. Yeah. Very few people get to do that kind of stuff. And so I love where I got to come from. I loved that year that I covered the volleyball team. That was a lot of fun. And then I got kicked up to be in basketball the year after that. And funny enough, that was the year the U.S. made it to the Final Four. So I got to travel all around the country with them, getting to follow their journey. And so I got very lucky. I would tell you that I got just as lucky getting to cover that volleyball season as I was that Final Four season, because I think both went a long way into what I was eventually going to do with football. But it taught me how to be a beat reporter. It taught me how to follow the details and to do interviews and handle yourself around a team and all of that kind of stuff. So I loved it, man. I really did.
That's very cool. So and then you bounced around. You had a couple radio jobs, some assistant TV reporting, and then you covered the Florida Gators again, but with this time it was for football, right? For SB Nation, the website. That's a pretty big website.
Yeah. So what ended up happening there is I knew I wanted to get into football because football was the biggest audience, and I knew that had the biggest feeling to it, and that was definitely a passion of mine. I never got to play football growing up because I was super small as a high schooler, and my mom knew that I would get absolutely killed, so she never let me play football. So I've never even played an organized football outside of flag, which I've played plenty of. Mm-hmm. But when I graduated, what I did was I've always loved the NFL draft. And even going back to the Southeastern pre-Florida days, I was writing mock drafts. I was talking about draft prospects on Twitter. And what ended up happening is that while I was at UF, I created a website. It was at that time, it was a Weebly website, and it was all about the NFL draft.
Was that the Road to Radio City one?
Yes, it was called Road to Radio City. That's what it was called. And so, I ended up changing how it looked and involved in the website, and that taught me how to build some websites as well, know a little bit of code on the back end. And that's where I stored all my rankings when I did mock drafts, and then eventually got to the point where I had some people following the blog that ended up writing for me. So then I had a staff of a couple of writers that I was using, and this is all my free time, and this is just something that I really enjoyed. And as that kind of took off, that's when I started reaching out as well. And when you talk right there about the Florida gig, covering the Gators from a different perspective, I covered them from Alligator Army on SB Nation, as well as doing stuff for SEC country. I did Inside the Gators as well. And so I kind of just picked up wherever I could. And I did film breakdowns and X's and O's stuff and sometimes some feature stories. But honestly, that's a big thing that a lot of people talk about is hey, especially in the journalism industry, never work for free, right? If you know your work is valuable, don't work for free. I love that. I'm 100% here for it, and I always want people to fight for what they're worth because I do think the journalists get taken advantage of in this industry way too much. Yeah. But I'm also, I wouldn't be here if I didn't work for free. And that's another truth as well. I had to put my name out there to a couple of different blogs and help out here and pick up an article there. And honestly, what that did the most is it expanded my network. It got me a lot of practice writing, which is something that I desperately needed at that time. But it also got me to meet a lot of people, a lot of new editors and other writers and friends that I still have in the business to this day. And so that's really where it picked up for me when I started doing some freelance stuff for football.
And was that before social media? So before people could follow you on Twitter and stuff?
No, believe it or not, I think I first made a Twitter in 2010. So I've been around with Twitter for a long time. And so that was also a key thing, is that no matter where I was working, I was picking up little networks in my following and who I was following along the way. And I think that's, man, if I had a piece of advice for anybody who was trying to do this, it's that your network will take you places. That you definitely got to make sure that you are improving as a writer, that you're always challenging yourself, that you're constantly reading people whose work that you really enjoy and are at a platform that you love. There's no doubt about it that when it comes to the work part, you've got to be up to standard there. But at the end of the day, who you know and who your network is, who's in your corner, who's going to fight for you, who might bring your name up in a job search, that's what will really take you to the next level of potentially being able to make it in this business. And that's, with social media, to your question, that was something that I was able to do throughout the process.
Now, so is that how you got the job? Because then you ended up being a beat writer for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Pewter Report. Is that how you got that one? Somebody you knew, or?
Yeah, so that's, exactly the story there. And funny enough, Pewter Report's been around for 25 years. They're a staple to who is covering the Buccaneers. But I hate to admit this, but I didn't even know who they were. I lived just south of Tampa, and I had followed the Buccaneers my entire life.
Wow.
I'd read the Tampa Bay Times, the St. Pete Times, the Tampa Tribune. I knew the ESPNs and everything. But I didn't know what Pewter Report was. And it's so funny because they've been such a staple of covering the Buccaneers for so many years. And what happened was, this was another thing where I lived just south of Tampa. And I happened to know the editor of the Bucs Nation page on SB Nation this would have been about 6 years ago. And I knew him just because I had written an article about Derek Brooks going into the Hall of Fame. I had nowhere to put it. I wasn't writing for a Bucs website at that time. I would have just been putting it on a really random blog. But I spent a long time on it. It was a feature article that I had written.
Yeah.
And I had all I did was I emailed the editor for Bucs Nation because I had talked to him once or twice before. And I said, hey, man, I wrote this article in my free time. I've got nowhere to put it. If you want to put it on Bucs Nation, feel free. Here you go. You can have it. And he's like, this is really great. Thank you so much for this. This is a lot of research. This is good stuff. And then from there, he reached out to me again a couple of months later when training camp was about to start. And he said, hey, we don't really have anybody covering training camp. Would you be interested? And I said, yeah, in fact, I can drive up every single day and I can give you live practice recaps. I can do that. And he's like, holy crap, that would be amazing. So again.
And that's got to be fun, right? Because you get the media badge and then you're going right up there, right next to the players and stuff, right? And get to talk to them and interview them.
It was great because this is some experience that I got to have at UF, but I had never done it to this extent for a pro sport.
Right.
So I ended up covering training camp just off of that. And after training camp, doing all the coverage there, he asked me to keep covering during the season. And this is all in my free time. I'm working a full-time job outside of this as well. I ended up doing that. And then Scott Reynolds, my boss for Pewter Report when I was there, ended up reaching out to me. I'd never heard of him before. I'd never heard of Pewter Report. And he said, I want to hire you after. And he read my stuff on Bucs Nation. And he said, I want to hire you full-time at Pewter Report. And that ended up, man, I'm telling you, that was a dream job for me. I loved that job so much. I love what I'm doing now. I don't want anybody to think that I don't. I absolutely love what I'm going for and who I'm working with now at the Draft Network. That as well is so much of a dream job for me. But I was lucky enough to find myself in a position to cover my hometown team as a full-time reporter just because of work that I had done for free almost, for freelance.
Yeah.
They actually they ended up starting to pay me as a very part-time employee after that, but the connection I got was just through networking, and
Wow.
I'm lucky, man. I'm so unbelievably
That's very
lucky.
cool. Yeah.
And I know that too. I never even applied for that job, and it's something that I got. And all I can say is that, hey, never stop meeting people. You never know who's going to read the next article that's going to hold your next job.
Right. So, and then was it around this time that you you jumped on the NFL Locked On podcast, NFL Draft Locked On podcast? Because that's how I found you. That's how I became a fan. I was Googling like NFL Draft podcasts, and like you guys were one of the few that came up, and one of the few that I could list. Some of them were just terrible. And I found your guys, and I was like, oh, this is really good. And then I don't know what happened to your other co-host. Was it John? Was that his name?
Yeah, so John, funny enough with John actually asked me he was already working for the show, for Locked On NFL Draft, and he was co-host with another good friend of mine, Luke Easter. And I was already listening to their podcast because they were friends of mine in the industry, and I loved them, and I thought they were smart and they were great, so I was already listening to the show. And then Luke ended up having to no longer work for them. And then John reached out to me and asked me to be the co-host. And I absolutely jumped at the opportunity. It was such a blast getting to do that with John. John is now, funny enough, John now has my job with Pewter Report that I had before. And that is I cannot tell you how cool that is for me that John's now in the NFL doing what he should be. He's so great. I mean, like, John covers and knows football so well, and he wasn't able to do it full time for the longest time, and now he gets to do it for a team. I'm so excited, and it's so funny how full circle it comes with me now working for the Draft Network full time, no longer working for Pewter Report, and John jumping on that now, getting to cover the Bucs full time.
Right. Yeah. So now you got this job. You're the senior NFL draft analyst at is it just mostly a website, the Draft Network, or do they do YouTube stuff or?
Man, we've done a little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything. Okay.
The last 2 years.
Yeah. It sounds like a really fun job.
Mainly, it's so great. And the people that I work with, it make it even better. And I'll tell you that too. People talk about sports being a dream job, and it definitely is. I'm so blessed to be able to do this, but who you work with, the people that you get to work with really makes a job a dream job. And I'm very lucky to be doing this with some great people. And it's based off of being a website, but we do all kinds of stuff on social media, on Twitch when we're streaming, on YouTube with video content. We're all over Instagram as well. And so we're everything at this point. We're a full-blown brand. I couldn't be prouder of the people that we're working with. And yeah, man, it is just the beginning of some of the stuff that we have planned for the future. So yeah, it's been a blast. That's
very cool. So it seems like there's more of an interest in the NFL draft. Like if you go back in the history of the draft, I mean, I don't think it was even televised, and now it's this huge event. We actually went last year in Nashville. It was a blast. It was so fun.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we were going to go this year in Vegas. We had a hotel booked. Of course, it's all canceled now, but I mean, that's why what I love about the NFL draft, it's kind of the drama. It's not like these dumb reality shows, but it's real drama because it's exciting to see where all these players land. Like history's being made. Every team passed on Tom Brady multiple times. He could have easily ended up on another team, but it's very possible a lot of these players could end up on other teams. And also, I'm a fan of my team. Like the Seahawks. It's like getting Christmas presents, a bunch of young new players. So that's kind of why I love it. But you tell me, why do you love the draft so much? Like, what is it about the NFL draft for you?
I mean, the draft is so great because it's a great marriage between college and pro football. They're totally different kinds of energy. And when you're a fan of what's going on in the college sphere, it's a different feeling than when you're a fan of what's going on in the NFL sphere. And I don't even just mean like being a fan of a team or like calling yourself a fan. I love college football. Genuinely.
Oh yeah,
everything about it. The school atmosphere, the tailgate, the fact that if you lose one game, the season's over, and every week means so much, and these big historic rivalries between schools. I mean, that's incredible. And then, of course, the pro level, it's different. You're competing for a championship. There's divisional rivalries. There's hometown feels to it. There's obviously watching the game at the very highest level that it could be played. And The NFL draft is such a marriage between both of those. It allows you to be a full-on fan of both of what's going on in college and the NFL, enjoy both spectrums and spheres as much as you can, and it all culminates to this. And that's probably what I would say I love the most about it. And two, it's the stories of these guys. You know, it's about going from being a student athlete, if you will, to a professional. It's about these journeys that these kids take as early high school recruits, going through those rankings, then all the early mornings of waking up, making it through a D1 college football program, transforming your body through all the hours in the weight room and the film room, and becoming a better man and a football player, and then all of it comes to a head on draft night.
Oh,
Walking
wow.
across the stage, shaking the commissioner's hand, giving him a hug, and those emotions and things like that, man, that's what I love the most. That's why I fell in love with the draft. That's why I called my very first website Road to Radio City, because it is. It's a journey that these prospects go on, and it's a road that they follow, getting to what is their dream of becoming professional football players. And it's honestly, that's what I love the most about it.
That's very cool. So now that, I mean, this is your full-time job now, is doing that website that you're on now, the NFL or the Draft Network, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So when you look at a prospect, I mean, now that you're doing this full-time, when you look at a prospect, like, how much tape do you watch? Do you just watch their highlights? Are you watching a full game? I mean, you can't possibly watch every game of every prospect, right?
No, you can't do that. There's just not. I mean, there's not enough hours in a year, honestly, and I kind of wish that there was. But you know, it all depends how much tape is available. You know, if we can get ourselves some college football coaches tape, you'll watch that as much as you possibly can. But if not, you kind of stick with the broadcast angle. The people who upload these things to YouTube, man, they are saints. They make this job easier for us, and they also make it possible for a lot of people to be fans of the NFL draft. So I definitely want to give those people a shout out, because their work often goes unnoticed. But to those people who are doing the cut ups of the players and of the game, y'all are awesome. Y'all allow us to have a lot of fun and to enjoy this thing. But, you know, generally you'd love to watch about 3 to 4 games minimum of a player. And then, you know, if you can get 6 or 7, you'd like that, because you never know what somebody's going through, whether it is a time of where they are in the playbook, what might be going on outside of their life, if they're going through injury, whether they're really starting to click in terms of chemistry with the rest of the players around them. You just never know. And so you always want to give a guy a chance to show what he can do best. And so I would say a minimum of 3 games when you're really trying to evaluate a prospect. And then you're probably shooting for anywhere between 4 to 6 games when it comes to an evaluation.
Okay, that's cool. No, that's really cool. So every year the press, you know, they rate their prospects, and they're often pretty accurate, especially towards the top. But then it gets kind of murky the further down you go towards the later round prospects. Like, what kinds of inside information do you think teams have that's not public? And how will the pandemic affect that this year? Because in-person interviews and even medical things are not able to happen. So this could be the most accurate mock draft we ever see, because I don't think teams are going to have much more information than the press and the public have, right?
Yeah, it's going to go one or two ways, right? It's either going to be very vanilla and it's going to be predictable because teams aren't going to move or go off script, or it's going to be absolute chaos. It's going to be I think it's going to be one of the two. So that's kind of where it is. And it's an interesting time, because those top 30 visits mean a lot to these teams. And you can do these Zoom interviews and FaceTime with these prospects, but it's not the same as having them in your building. It's really not. And it's especially not the same when you can't get your team doctors to check these guys out. And I think that means a lot too. And so there's a lot of inside information. Now, the background, that's, I think, very important as well. These teams have a lot of sources. They've got a lot of people they talk to, especially when it comes to these top guys, about what makes them tick, how they are above the shoulders, how they process things, what they're like off the field. And I always say this about my evaluation. You are drafting a person as much as a player. Who they are between the ears and inside the chest and the heart, if you will, means just as much to achieving their ceiling as their athletic ability is, because it's got to be about being, handling your business as a pro and as a young man as you make it into the league. It's about work ethic. It's about picking things up. It's about how well you diagnose and you understand and how disciplined you are and how serious you take football.
Yeah.
So all of that goes into it, and I think that all goes into having that background of information. That I still think teams are going to have the background information, but then the getting to know the guys is something that they're going to miss out on.
Right. So I don't know you must be a Tom Brady fan now because he's a Buccaneer. So I'm not sure if you heard his interview on Howard Stern. Did you listen to that yet?
I did not get to listen to it, but I was following it intently on Twitter while it was going on.
Okay, because you can actually hear Sirius is free until May 15th, so you can listen to it. It's a 2-hour interview. It's long, but it's really good because you really get to understand the psychology, like why he's so competitive, why he's a winner. There's a famous story, you probably know this, about Jamarcus Russell, who ended up being a total bust. He was a number 1 overall pick, but I think he was kind of lazy. The coaches didn't think he was watching film, so they gave him some blank videotapes, and then he came back and he said he watched the blitz packages on the tapes. So obviously work ethic and drive are important in these things, right? So how much do you think that goes into analyzing the draft prospects? And how do you analyze that? Because, they can often say the right things in the interview, but then, behind the scenes, that goes back to maybe that's something where they're talking to coaches and stuff, or how do you measure those things?
Yeah, it varies from team to team. And that's why I think losing these top 30 visits is so important because, when you get to shake a man's hand and stare him in the eye and hear him answer questions right in front of you, that's different than even when you're asking him questions over the internet or hearing him speak at a podium or something like that. And so, it varies from team to team, and that's why the draft is so crazy every year, and why one player could be ranked 21st on one team's board and ranked 85th on another team's board. It just has to do with that human element, and that teams are still trying their best to make sure that they're able to do that, but they're finding out that it's becoming difficult this year.
Do you have inside information? Because you said, it's who you know. You've got 38,000 followers on Twitter. You've got all these connections. Are you getting inside information from inside teams or inside press people that have kind of an inside track that have given you stuff where you go, oh, okay, I'm not showing that up that's not showing up on Google, but now this is good stuff to know?
Yeah, there's always, and it goes back to that networking thing, right?
Yeah.
Even some kids that, man, I'm saying kids. We're almost in our 30s now, but people I went to college with, who were in my journalism program, are now covering these other teams full time. So now the networks that they have are now part of my network if I ask them. So it's even something as simple as that. But yeah, we definitely have our sources that are inside certain team buildings. We definitely get some inside information there. What
team do you think is poised to make the biggest jump from the draft? Do you think it's the Bengals because they're probably going to get Joe Burrow, or is there another team that has multiple draft picks that's, that can maybe drastically improve with a good draft?
I honestly think that it's Miami because of all of the picks.
That's true. They do have a lot of picks.
First-round picks. They got 2 second-round picks. They're going to pick up so many talented players in this draft class. And so I've got to think that it's Miami because it's going to start at the top. It's probably going to start with a quarterback, and that's going to be the boost that they need to turn their franchise around.
Wow. Well, we got to nerd out a little bit here. We got to talk about the prospects here. So QBs, Joe Burrow, I was listening to one of your podcasts and you said, or somebody said that you had him on your board as a number 1 quarterback back in October. Like you were one of the first people to do that. And you're still thinking he's the real deal. The games I've seen this year, he was insanely good. Like he's the real deal, right? Even with the small hands or whatever.
No, so the difference with Joe Burrow is, and it goes back to that between the ears, above the shoulders, whatever you want to call it. Joe Burrow even said this at his combine. He's not the biggest dude. He doesn't have the biggest hands. He doesn't have the strongest arm. But the thing that he does is that he prepares and he understands the game better than anybody else. He challenges himself and he has that work ethic. And when you watch LSU this year, you'll often see that he was rarely rattled, ever, whether he was in the pocket or out, because he'd seen it all. He knew what he was going to do. He knew what happened if it broke down. There was no panic in this man because he prepared so well and because he was that accurate with the football. And I really do think that even though there are other quarterbacks who are more physically gifted than him, nobody beats him above the shoulders. Nobody beats his mental processing for the game, and that's why he's absolutely going number 1 overall. For
sure. Do you think he'll actually make the Bengals good? That's a hard thing to do. Carson Palmer had a lot of talent too, but he couldn't take them. I don't think they even won one playoff game with him, right?
That's The answer to that question is a lot more than just a quarterback. And I tell people this all the time. When you draft a quarterback number 1 overall, your job is not done there. It is then your responsibility as a GM and as a head coach to build the team around them over the next couple of years to make that number 1 overall pick worth it. And so there's just a lot more questions that have to be answered there, although Joe Burrow is, of course, the centerpiece that you got to start with.
Yeah. So then your top 5, you've got, tell me if this is right. I think you have Burrow 1, Tua 2, Justin Herbert from Oregon, number 3, Jordan Love 4, and then Jacob Eason and Jalen Hurts, kind of that 5th, or I guess maybe tied for 5th, or top 5 or 6.
I would probably number it now. Joe Burrow 1, Tua is 2, Justin Herbert's 3, Jalen Hurts is 4, and then I really have not figured out who my QB5 is yet.
Okay.
So that's my top 4, though.
What about, I noticed Anthony Gordon was not on the list. I'm a big Wazoo fan. I remember last year, you guys kind of dissed Gardner Minshew, said, oh, no, he doesn't have what it takes. But he had a pretty good rookie year, right? I mean,
no, he did. He did. I like Anthony Gordon, and the thing that I like the most about Anthony Gordon is that he just throwing the ball is in his nature. They throw it so many times a game at Washington State that, unlike, take Shea Patterson, for example, from Michigan. Mm-hmm. Shea Patterson, the game for him was built so much around play action and the run game that even when he would drop back to throw, he looked uncomfortable throwing the ball. Anthony Gordon knew he was throwing the ball every time he liked it. And so it's throwing passes, taking chances down the field, and especially throwing to the end zone, it's just second nature to him. Mm-hmm. He doesn't think about it.
He had a really good Senior Bowl, right? Didn't you think?
I mean, he had a good Senior Bowl week, and so I think that characteristic of a quarterback is really important.
I've seen him drafted all over from like 3rd and 4th to like undrafted, which is really mind-boggling to me that it could be that big of a range.
He's not going undrafted. I think he's going somewhere between the 3rd and the 4th round.
Okay. And what about, let's talk running back. I love talking draft. This is amazing. It's like listening to your podcast. Now I've got you on my podcast. It's really fun to get your feedback here. But I think Jonathan Taylor is amazing. I think I think he's the best running back. But a lot of boards, I see him second to DeAndre Swift. Do you like Swift better or Taylor? And what other running backs do you like? Because there's a lot of good running backs in this draft, I think.
Yeah, I'm a Taylor guy. I think the way that my rankings are going to read out are Taylor's going to be RB1. J.K. Dobbins is going to be 2. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be 3. Mm-hmm. DeAndre Swift is going to be 4, and Cam Akers is going to be 5.
Oh, Swift is all the way down to 4, huh?
Yeah, but you got to realize that all 4 of those guys are going to be potential starting caliber running backs in the NFL. People are going to look at it, and it's just like what you said right there. You can go, oh, wow, Swift is 4. Yeah, Swift is 4, but I would still rank him as a starting running back in the NFL, so it doesn't exactly matter. Right. And to be honest, it just depends what team is on the clock, that order of running backs. It'll differ for every single team.
Do you think Taylor will be there when my Seahawks pick at 27?
Do I think Taylor will be there?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of people that want us to. I'm one of the people that think that we should draft. I know we have Chris Carson, but he's only got 1 year left. And I think Taylor's like a can't miss prospect. Like, I think you're going to regret if you don't take him.
I think Taylor's really good, and I do think that I think they'll go there.
You don't think Miami would take him right before us?
They might, but it's in the realm of possibility.
Yeah, your mocks haven't gotten that far. I think you guys are only on the Cowboys, right? You guys do one mock draft per episode, and you've got an expert from each team. It's really cool what you guys are doing on that Locked On podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. It's been a lot of fun.
What about the Memphis kid? Now, is he a running back or a wide receiver?
Who is this?
Oh, no, I'm blanking on his name. The Memphis, I want to say it's not Gordon.
Oh, Antonio Gibson?
Gibson, not Gordon. Yeah, Gibson, yeah. What do you think? He seems like he's pretty explosive, but I've seen him maybe 3rd or 4th round on a lot of boards, but I think he could go higher. He seems like a Tyreek Hill kind of kid, right? Am I off on that?
Yeah, no, I wouldn't. I'm not going to compare anybody to Tyreek Hill because he's rare, but he's definitely got those gadget traits to him. He can play slot receiver, and he can be a really useful running back out of the backfield. I think that he'll definitely find those roles in the NFL. Yeah,
it'll be interesting. What other wide receivers do you like? I know your co-host is a big CeeDee Lamb fan. Henry Ruggs is amazingly fast. There's a Texas kid, Devin Duvernay?
Duvernay.
Yeah, he's
Yep.
pretty good too. I mean, there's a lot of good wide receivers. Which ones are your favorites?
I like Jeudy in the first round. I'd say KJ Hamler in the second round. Brian Edwards in the third round. Let's go Quintez Cephas in the fourth round, and then those are probably, if I'm taking like my guys in each of those rounds, those would be the players.
Wow. And what about safeties? Did you see that Grant Delpit? He ran it was like a 4.38 40 time at his like a cyber pro day.
Yeah.
Do you count those?
I don't believe any of those. Man.
You don't believe it,
and I don't blame them for trying because they got to do something with no pro days. But here's the thing about Delpit: like Delpit's already athletic. We didn't need it, whether it's a 4.38 or a 4.42. I mean, that doesn't matter. Delpit can run. Delpit's a hell of an athlete. He just didn't want to tackle last year, and that's. Grant Delpit was my number one player in the class going into the 2020 or the 2019 season. He was number one. I had him number one on my big board before the season started.
Okay.
And he just didn't want to tackle this year. I understand that people are going to say that he was hurt, and I'll give him a little bit of a leeway for that, but that tackling was bad beyond just being hurt, and that sucks. Because I think that he's a hell of a player, so I hope that he's a lot better in the NFL because I know he can be.
So you think he could bounce back? So because he did want to tackle the year before, right?
Yeah, I mean his 2018 tape I thought was awesome.
Weird, interesting. What other safeties do you like? I mean, Antoine Winfield. Do you think he's pretty good, right? Kyle Duggar.
I love Antoine Winfield. Yeah, I love Antoine Winfield. Jeremy Chin and Kyle Duggar, I think, are just these X factor guys that are going to be able to play box safety. They're going to be able to play some linebacker. They're going to be able to give you some coverage stuff. Ashton Davis is another one who I think's got a lot of single high ability. But then the one I think everybody's sleeping on is Terrell Burgess from Utah. I think that he's very smart. He recognizes things really well. He's not the fastest guy in the world, but I think you got to be smart to play safety. And I think that Terrell Burgess is really smart.
Definitely. What about cornerbacks? Are you high on C.J. Henderson? He went to Florida. You got to be high on that guy just for that reason, right? His tape was sick. He's got a
high ceiling to him.
Yeah.
What?
I think his tape was sick. I don't know if you watched his tape. Like he's crazy. It seems really, really good from the tape that I've seen. I mean, I just watched the highlights.
Yeah, I've watched every single CJ game because I watch every single Florida game.
Sure,
he's got a lot of potential. I mean, he's a strong, fast, long corner, and so I think anytime you have that combination, you could thrive in the NFL.
What other corners do you like? It seems like the cornerback position has changed. Like a lot more teams are doing the Seahawk thing where they get the kind of bigger cornerbacks with long arms. Who fits that mold this year?
I think Jaylon Johnson, if I had to say one. He's just a guy who loves to play man coverage, and teams are always going to be searching for man coverage kind of corners. So I think he plays that style. And then Amik Robertson is the other one from Louisiana Tech. He's a smaller guy. He's about 5'8", probably about 85, but he's just got a knack for the ball. He's got such great ball skills.
Oh, awesome. What about, let's talk defensive linemen. So like Bradlee Anae, I think I saw him in the Senior Bowl. He looked really good, but some people are saying like, oh no, he's not like an every down player. He's more just like a pass rush specialist. Do you think he just got lucky on the Senior Bowl? Because he looked pretty dominant.
I feel of that mold. No, I wouldn't say dominant, and that's the thing, is that I think he's going to be a good rotational lineman for a team, but I just didn't think that he was that dominant. He's not overly strong. He doesn't have great bend, and he doesn't have – I mean, he just got a good burst in the punch when he can get off the line, but he just wasn't super dominant. So I think he's a rotational player. What
about is it Zuniga? You got to know about him, right?
Jabari Zuniga.
Yeah.
Yeah, he is explosive for a man his size. I mean, this dude can move. His athletic profile adjusted to his weight is really high. You just got to get him to judge the snap count a little bit better. There were so many times where he was the last guy coming out of the stance, but he's got some untapped ability.
Is he a riser? Like, is he gonna go round one now? Because they're saying maybe round 2 or 3.
No, I don't think he's going round 1. In fact, I wouldn't even say he's going to go round 2. I think he'll probably go early round 3.
Who are your favorite? I mean, obviously Chase Young's got to be the number 1 pass rusher. Who else do you like? You like the Iowa kid? And
no, I'm not big on Epinesa. That combine really scared me. I love Zach Vaughn. I think Zach Vaughn's an edge rusher. Put him on the edge. Let him attack the pocket. He's so good at it. He's very savvy. Josh Uche is another one, smaller dude. I think his speed to power is really great. I like Jonathan Grenard from Florida as well. I think he's got some really nice all-around game. He's not liable in the run, and he's really got a knack for making plays in the backfield. And then Terrell Taylor from Tennessee, I'll mention him as well. I think that he's a guy who I think is getting slept on by a lot of people. He's got a lot of athletic ability, and he's just got to learn some counter rush moves, and if he does that, he'll be fine.
Okay. And what about defensive tackles? Who should we look for on draft day that's going to be defensive tackles going
Well,
high?
there's kind of the obvious guys, right? The Derek Browns and the Javon Kinlaw. They're really good. You know, you look in the top of the second round, Neville Gallimore, Ross Blacklock, Justin Madubuike. They're awesome. But my guy's Marlon Davidson. I just think he's a very versatile piece. He can play 3 tech for you on the inside. He can play 5 tech as a potential edge player. I think he's strong against the run, and I think he's a hard worker against the pass. He's not going to be super bendy or fast around the edge because he's like 305 pounds, but he's a worker, loves the game of football, and he'll be a great rotational dude.
What about the Alabama kid, Davis?
Raekwon Davis.
Yeah, Raekwon
He's
Davis.
good against the run. I think he's a great anchor. Obviously, 6'7", 310 pounds. It's hard to find guys that big, but he just doesn't offer a lot in the pass rush. And so I think because of that, he's probably going to be a second or third round for a team that's really just looking to pick up an anchor guy.
And okay, so what about linebacker? Let's talk linebackers. What do you think of Willie Gay? He seems like that's another one where I've seen him go as high as like second round in mocks, and I've seen him go like sixth round. Like, where do you think he'll go? Because he had a pretty good 40 time.
No, the class is not strong, so I think that with his combine and how well he was there, somebody's going to take a chance on him. I think he's going to be, oh man, he could go anywhere from round 2 to round 4, but I don't think he gets past round 4. He's just too athletic, and this class is looking for athletic linebackers.
What other linebackers do you like?
Akeem Davis-Gaither, I think, shows a lot of promise. He's another athletic guy that I think can really develop into a nice linebacker prospect. I love Marcus Bailey. Just the injury history sucks for him. Torn both of his ACLs, or I believe that's what he's torn. He's had 2 season-ending knee surgeries, but man, he's very smooth in coverage, has a good instinct, knows how to read reads, whether it's in the run game or the pass game. So I like him a lot. I just hope that he's healthy.
Yeah, and then obviously like Kenneth Murray and those guys that are they'll be a little bit higher, right?
Yeah, I think both of those guys are top 50, Kenneth Murray and Patrick Queen.
Okay, and I'm glad we do have time, so I do want to talk about offensive line. I saved that one for last because that's probably that's hard to watch tape on offensive linemen, but it's such a valuable position in the NFL. So who are the guys, like, how do you think this will shape up? Because people are saying like Isaiah Wilson and the Prince kid from Auburn, those are like second and third round guys. But I feel like every time the offensive linemen go way sooner than people expect them to go, right?
Yes, because it's the priority position. You know, you got the big 4 guys, Jedrick Willis, Tristan Wirfs, Mekhi Becton, and Andrew Thomas. Those are locks for the top 15. I don't think any of them are getting out of there. Then you're probably going to have Josh Jones as well as Isaiah Wilson go in the first round. So that's 6 right off the bat there. And then up at the top of the second round, Prince Teguanogo from Auburn, Austin Jackson from USC, and then potentially Lucas Niang from TCU, who I think has got awesome tape. He's just got a hip issue that he's been dealing with the last 2 years. I just named you, what was that, 7, 8?
Yeah.
8 offensive tackles easy that I could see going in the first 2 rounds of the draft. So that's just what happened.
So who's your sleeper pick then? Did you like the, what is that kid's name? Ben Barch or something like that? Is that his name?
I do like Ben Barch. Yeah, no, man. He's got some good tape, even though he's playing at a lower competition. I think he's good. He's a nice sleeper. CD Charles from LSU, he's got some work he needs to do with cleaning up his stuff, but man, he is athletic. The dude can move. He can play really well. Ezra Cleveland and Matt Hurd are the other 2 players that people are really big on. So it's definitely a name to know offensive tackle class.
For sure. Now, do you think, just overall, what prospects do you think of any position are overrated or potential busts? Like, who's the Johnny Manziel or Ryan Leaf or Brian Bosworth, like the overly cocky guy that's not really that good this year?
Oh, wow. I'll say, I don't know about like overly cocky. I don't want to go after anybody.
Or maybe like overly hyped. Yeah.
I honestly think that Jordan Love's overhyped. I do. I think that people are giving him too much of a benefit of the doubt. I think that he's just a lot more of it. You know, he could pan out. The arm is there and the arm is great and it's awesome. But I think people are giving him too much of the benefit of the doubt. And I think that he is more of a roll of the dice than people are willing to admit.
Yeah, he's a quarterback. What was it, Utah State? Is that where he goes?
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
Utah. So a little bit smaller school, but I mean, D1 still. But yeah, they're giving him a lot of credit for all the athletic stuff, but not as much the numbers, right?
Right.
Yeah. That's a dangerous game to play. I mean, it could pan out, but yeah, you just never, it's more of a gamble, I guess, with those kinds of things. Now, what do you think? I'm a Seahawks fan. What do you think the Seahawks will do with they have a first rounder plus 2 second. Do you have any idea what do you think who they should take?
Yeah, I think that they're probably looking at edge rusher in the first round. A guy like Eater Gross-Matos who might be on the board. Shoot, they'd love Caleb on Chason, but that's not going to happen. But then, those 2 picks at the end, they could go guys like Julian Okwara or Josh Uche if they're there at the end of the second round. I think that potentially wide receiver as well. And then if they could pick up some extra offensive line help, that would be great.
Yeah, they definitely need the offensive line up. They've needed it for years, and it seems like they. Do you have any theory behind that? I mean, obviously you don't work for the Seahawks or anything, but why do they not take offensive? Is it just because they feel like they're reaching if they take an offensive lineman by the time they pick?
I don't know, man. I really don't know, because that's priority position, man. You got to figure out the trenches, and it just doesn't seem like they've. I understand that every draft is different, situations are different, but man, it's so weird that they've had the trend that they've had.
Yeah, and then they had a Fetty for those years, and he was so I mean, you talk to any Seahawks fan, we all know his name because he gets so many false start penalties, and he just blows it on so many plays where they allow sacks. And finally, they let him go, and they got some other guys, some free agents that I'd never heard of. But so it'll be interesting to see what they do if they take anyone for offensive linemen. Well, thank you so much for coming on my show. Now, I'd like to end with a charity. Did you have something? Is there a charity that you work with or that you're passionate about, or a cause?
So I don't have one that I work with currently. What I remember you asked me this before I came on, and honestly, what I would just like to say to everybody who's out there is that there are a lot of businesses that are suffering because of the coronavirus situation.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of local places around you that are losing employees and that are sometimes going out of business. And these are really, really good people. And I know that's a fact all across the country. And so what I would just, instead of naming a singular charity, what I would just encourage all of your listeners to go do is, whether it's your favorite restaurant or some place that you frequently go, or even, maybe a place where you get your hair cut, like you were talking about at the beginning, whatever it is, there's places around your community that impact the people around you that are normally doing great work that don't have the opportunity to do that. And those are the people who this sucks for the most when it comes to the lockdown, outside of obviously people who are affected by the disease directly. But that's the stuff that we can try to prevent even more with this is whether it's buying a gift card or doing some takeout once a week at this place, or just finding out who owns the business and maybe send them a little bit of what you can afford to send them that you might already send them if you're a frequent customer of theirs. Just try and think of some places in your local community that might be suffering, some good people who normally are doing good things around where you are, and try to help them out during that tough time.
I love it. That's great. That's a great thing. I mean, you've had a great career so far. You've got, like I said, over 38,000 followers on Twitter, Twitter, right? And you're doing something right. Now, are we going to see you think someday on ESPN or NFL Network? Is that something that's a goal of yours, or you do want to continue to build your own brand?
I don't know what the future holds, man, but I can tell you, I'm having a blast doing what I'm doing right now. It was great to get to do this little interview with you. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Everybody out there, go visit thedraftnetwork.com. If you're a draft fan, a college football fan, an NFL fan, whatever it is, we got what you're looking for. I promise you.
Yeah, and check out
some awesome stuff, and it's only the beginning.
Yeah, and check out your podcast too if you really want to nerd out about the draft like I do every year, and it'll just be exciting to see what happens when the draft actually comes, where all these players go, and we'll have to I'll have to follow up with you after that and just see what your thoughts were. I'll listen to your podcast at least.
Yeah, appreciate you listening and shouting us out, man. We really do.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. Thanks, Trevor.
Hey, thanks, man. Anytime.
All right, take care. Bye-bye. All right, that was a lot of fun. A lot of information and prospects to study before the draft this year. This will be a fun one to look back on in a couple of years and see if the names that we talked about will have done anything. But one name I know that will do amazing things is Trevor Sikkema, my guest. I want to thank him again for coming on. I could easily see that guy working on ESPN or NFL Network very soon. And I want to thank all of you for listening and making it all the way through this podcast. It might not have been an easy one if you're not into sports. But if you did enjoy it, please share it with a friend. You can subscribe by hitting that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Make sure to follow me and Trevor on social media. The Instagram links should be in the notes below, depending on which format you're listening to this podcast on. We're both on Twitter as well. I also have a Facebook page for my podcast. Until next time, have a great day or night.